Thank you for joining us today on the Unlocking Revenue Streams webinar. I'm joined today with Michael Shaw, the CEO of Whitehorse Village in Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, and Mark Getz, CEO and co-founder of Home Care Advocacy Network. We are so excited to discuss with both of you today the unlocking revenue streams and kind of get to know both Whitehorse Village and Home Care Advocacy Network and how they have partnered together. Let's just do a quick intro. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself in about 60 seconds. Mark, can you kick us off?
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Mark Getz. I'm the president and co founder, as Bridget mentioned, of Home Care Advocacy Network. We are a training and developing and senior living consulting organization based out of Omaha, Nebraska. I have four children now, like ages like 23 to 14. We've been present and active in this business with my co-founder Sierra over the last 6 years, and we believe that the next big step for home care and caring for seniors in the United States is empowering people like Michael Shaw and organizations like Whitehorse Village to be able to care anywhere. And so we are really excited to tell a little bit of our story today, and most importantly, to hear about the Whitehorse Village story. And we're thrilled to be here today, and we're thrilled to be partnered with Michael and his team.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself and Whitehorse Village.
Yeah, it's good to be with all of you. Thank you for listening today. I serve as CEO for Whitehorse Village. Been here about 2.5 years and have been in the senior living eco space since 1996, serving single sites and primarily working within multi-site organizations around 6 different states throughout the years. And Julie and I, my wife, we moved back to Pennsylvania in 2023, started this new job here at Whitehorse Village in December of 2023, and it has been awesome ever since. We've launched a new strategic plan that we affectionately call the Secretariat Plan, and the Home Care Advocacy team is instrumental in helping get that strategic plan off the ground, not just now, but for the foreseeable future. So just really excited to share what we've been doing here in the last year and a half, Mark, and other senior living providers really around the United States can take the best practices of what we've been doing together here and employ them at their own communities, partnering with Home Care Advocacy Network and affect change of your residents and your marketplace. No doubt about it.
Awesome. Well, I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. We are going to be discussing the financial cost of not providing your own home care services within your senior living organization. We're also going to be talking about how to build those services so they are a complement to your residential occupancy, and also choosing the right integration model for whether you're going to buy or build out with a partner. So let's get started. The industry data indicates that 86% of home care referrals originate from senior living providers. Michael, you had a third party home care agency providing services on your campus to your residents. How much potential revenue was leaking out of your communities to this agency and others that were providing care on your campus?
Yeah, great first question. When I first arrived at Whitehorse Village in 2023, we actually had 5 home care providers that we had on a list that we were utilizing to give to residents as the referrals were coming into the community. Of the 5, the primary referral source was billing 5,000 hours a month, generally had about six or seven 24-hour cases, and has had that a billable hour monthly rate for the last 7 years, to the tune right here at the campus. One home care company billing $1.5 million
Wow.
worth of revenue. Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
So that was a huge leak leak for your potential for your organization that you guys could have been providing services to your own residents.
Yeah, absolutely. Great provider. The caregivers that they sourced were great. The care was great, but after we noticed that potential, it just happened that we were putting together the strategic plan for the next couple of years for the campus, and then I met Mark at Leading Age at one of the Leading Age Pennsylvania conferences, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's right.
So,
We've only started. So
Mark, why is relying strictly on occupancy a financially risky model for senior living organizations?
Sure. That is a great question. So I would say, number one, it's very limiting on your brand. When you look at the amount of expense, time, effort, energy, especially in the nonprofit world, that nonprofit boards and organizations go into building a strong brand. If you don't build out a services model, what happens is you're really limiting your brand and all of your efforts to your limited occupancy, which is great, which is an honor to serve those residents just on an on-campus basis. But I think the reality is coming from the home care world. So a big part of my history was with the largest provider of home care services in the world, based here in Omaha for the longest time. They're no longer, but I trained so many franchisees over the years in that for that home care company, and we always trained our franchisees to serve as many people on campus as we can, wherever our home care franchise was, but then to work equally hard to keep as many people off that campus. So we were always working both sides. And we taught our franchisees how to skillfully build relationships with senior living providers who are oftentimes overwhelmed, right? And their main concern was their own reputation. So senior living leaders are, my experience with them over the years, they're very intentional about their brand and about their reputation in the most positive way possible. So home care companies for the longest time, and I taught and trained many of our franchisees to do just that. And so the challenge is if you're not doing that, especially in an environment where you're like Michael's organization and you have a continuous care retirement community or an age, or a life care, life plan community, it's very limiting to your brand, and you limit the opportunities to maximize your time here on this earth. Like it's the ability to serve people on campus is great, but then to open up the funnel to be able to serve people anywhere and to be able to serve people as well as on your campus. Because I think the other thing is that consumers are looking for what we call daughter directed care. So oftentimes in home care, it's a daughter who's a healthcare decision maker that might just want a little extra oversight. She wants to be able to direct a caregiver to her mom, even when they're living on a campus, and to be able to serve people like that they have the best of intentions for their loved ones. It's, again, if you're not doing that, you're limiting yourself and your brand. So I think those would probably be the two things that I would say to your question. Really good question.
No, that's great insight. Great insight. Back to you, Michael. I know that you had these third party agencies, providing care, but Whitehorse Village also had a their own kind of home care services, right? That you were trying to offer residents. And so between what was kind of the tipping point and that moment that you were like, you know what? We really need to focus and expand our current, resident assistance program and really strategically try to grow that and, shy away from that third party agency.
great question. Yeah, we had a strategic planning session with the board of directors, the senior management team, and some of the senior living strategic consultants in our eco space 2 years ago. And when we looked at Whitehorse Village, we had a very, very tiny home care program called RSSP, Resident Services Support Program. And it was in the beginning, it was just meant to, be a cost center, a small department that can fill in the gap of little things that residents need: dog walking, ironing of clothes, and little tiny tasks. And so at this strategic planning meeting, we were looking at our mission, vision, and values, and talking a little bit what Mark just was referencing about how we're in the business of helping people, and if people aren't living here at the community, then we can't help them. And so part of the strategic plan was to take the seedlings of that RSSP program and really look at what the model could be using that springboard of that program that was here really for 20 years, billing at maybe 250 to 300 hours per month compared to that one company I was just referencing of 5,000. And so what the home care advocacy team really helped me understand, if you really want to build a great home care program beyond the walls, it's twofold. One, getting away from the task oriented side to the home care business, like the dog walking and the ironing. And two is to really get at the main decision maker. And so when those were the two things that really clicked for me, that we need to get to the daughter or the son of the resident or the person who we're serving, and or this is all about a relationship with that person. It's beyond the task. People want to the person who's writing the signing the contract and writing the check for these services want peace of mind for mom or dad, and so they
Uh-huh.
want the caregiver. It goes well beyond just the tasks, and that was really the light bulb that went off for me. And so the home care advocacy network built out the business plan, the white paper, the pro forma for us that we were able to present to the different constituent groups to really take this in a whole different direction.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and I completely understand where you're coming from with Elisa, because I fall into that market, that adult daughter, aging parents, in-laws that, trying to have that peace of mind when I can't be there. So yeah, definitely understand that. Mark, what's the strategic advantage of capturing the market share and establishing that relationship with seniors before they're ready to move into a senior living campus?
Yeah. So first, I would say it is a very normal and critical pathway for someone who is investigating the needs of their loved one, their senior, to call one of the most respected places locally that they can find. So oftentimes, a daughter or a son, in some cases, has been driving by the senior living community for years in their community. So when maybe mom or dad starts to exhibit some needs, right? Like maybe not ready to move, but they're beginning the investigation. They oftentimes will call the place in their minds from what they've seen as one of the most respected places. So, one of the biggest advantages for senior living is they get an opportunity to then capture that relationship right now. They don't have to refer that relationship when they do call the senior living community and say, hey, mom is starting to fail. Would you happen to know of somebody who could maybe take care of her first at home for just a few hours? Who would you recommend? You don't have to pass that on to anyone else. Like, you've invested in your community, you've invested in your staff and in your own future. Now you get to take advantage of that on first call. So I think the first big advantage is you start to take home first control and you begin the opportunity to serve that family right now. And there's an immediate respect that they already have. In some of our studies that we've done, one particular one, our market landscapes study, most of the time healthcare decision makers are there, they assume that you do provide some level of home care services at the community already, right? And that's kind of what Michael had mentioned, that they had an RSSP program, but oftentimes those programs aren't built to scale, may not have the right software, the right leadership, all the things that we help organizations like White Horse Village with, training the people and being at the ready for them when they have questions as they develop their business. So I think that's the biggest opportunity, is that you get to begin the relationship right now, and then you don't have to then worry about, you've already spent so much money to produce that call, right? If you think about the marketing dollars that go into being able to produce a call to a senior living community, even if it's not for a direct move in, there's a value placed on that. And I think what you position yourself to do is not have to then re-fight for that same inquiry, that same relationship later on. You're already caring for them. right? And so I just think it's a much easier path, and I think it reduces the stress long term on a community. The more people you have in your own care model, both on and off campus, as you develop that, you're able to rely less and less on, throwing dollars at marketing to try to create more awareness of your community. You're already serving them. They're already liking the services that you're providing that's related to the community. So I think that's probably the biggest advantage and one of the biggest like risk mitigators in a model like White Horse Village Home Care.
I think you, like, from a vision standpoint, we talk a lot about, extending them beyond the walls. And I think when we were in a conversation recently, you were like, it's like adding that front porch and
Mm,
inviting someone in to the front porch, right? Like
yeah.
we're extending and offering people the welcoming up to the front porch before they come into the walls. And so I thought that was just a
Mm,
great way to like envision kind of that extending outside the walls
yeah.
of your community.
And White Horse Village has done a very nice job on the redevelopment of their community to create an actual very nice new front porch, so to speak. Michael, you guys have done a great job at your community, I think, of building the infrastructure and the culture that goes behind it. So, both physical and
Thank you.
metaphorically.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So, Michael, some organizations, when, you guys were doing some of the strategic planning that you were talking about, some organizations might kind of like fear the operational drag that might happen when you're launching a new service, right? And I know you've had the service there, but like it is a little bit scary, there's a lot of unknown, like how did you kind of talk about that turnkey partnership? Were you guys looking for a partner in helping launch this? Like what kind of helped you bypass some of those hurdles and the operational, that fear of launching and into home care?
Yeah, great question. We reached out to a couple of CEOs around the country that either had home care or were and then dropped it or sold it, and or CEOs who were reluctant to launch it. And what we noticed was something called organizational friction. CEOs we take great pride in operating life plan communities, and that's the business model, the operations. And so, asking existing staff to help us operate another entity was the common thread that we found out from other CEOs around the country.
Mm,
And we called it organizational friction. Asking existing staff like your HR departments to, okay, now we're gonna launch a home care business. We're gonna ask you to work 120% this week so that we can support this new business line. So we wanted to avoid organizational friction. And the second thing for me related to your question is we're in this together. There's people like Home Care Advocacy Network that have done this for a living throughout your entire careers. And so to do this, to execute this strategic step when this business line, it's very strategic. There's a lot of expertise that's needed to make sure that it starts well and continues to operate with excellence. And you need people who love this part of the eco space. And so for us, it was a natural thing to avoid the strategic friction, and align with somebody who loves home care, like Home Care Advocacy Network. And so that's what we did. We aligned with Home Care Advocacy Network. We built out a business plan to make sure we avoided the organizational friction. We put a very thoughtful pro forma together that had a couple of FTEs in that pro forma so that we could start it up with dedicated staff who also love home care, the home care ego space. And, for me, just being in this relationship now for a year and a little over a year and a half, it's really been a win-win situation. And now as of today, we're up to 4 FTEs that are dedicated to the home care business. We are not just breaking even, there's margin in the business. And that 5,000 hours that I was referencing a little while ago, as of tomorrow, we will be up to 4,600 hours per month.
That is awesome.
And so, yeah, 4 24-hour cases. And so, it's all about alignment, and we're in this together. We're stronger together, bringing people along with you, and organizations like Home Care Advocacy Network that can help you go change the world and influence lives one home care hour at a time.
That's awesome. That
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
that is a lot of great success. Mark, what kind of talking on that, what does Home Care Advocacy Network bring to the table to organizations like White Horse Village and other senior living, whether they have an existing home care service on
Yeah.
campus that they're looking to expand,
Yep.
or whether they don't have one at all? Like, what advantages does home care bring when you come to the table to help them and partner alongside them?
Well, so first, I would say, the word advocacy that we chose when we started the company. We surveyed 45 to 64-year-old females across the United States, and we asked them, when you are in the decision-making process, when your mom or dad is failing, how do you feel? What are you looking for when you're in that season? What is your hope for tomorrow in that season? And by and large, healthcare decision makers who had a loved one who was failing, who was a senior, their mom or dad, they were looking for an advocate. Like, they were looking around saying, who is on my side? Who can help? And, the world just isn't wired currently in the way where we honor seniors and what their needs are, maybe the way it will be in the future, especially as we get to 2031 and there's going to be more seniors than children for the first time in the US. And the world is beginning to wake up to caregiving. So I just wanted to say that I think, like, just as a healthcare decision maker is looking for an advocate when they're trying to find care and figure out what is the next step for my mom. What do I do? We, in the same vein at Home Care Advocacy Network, we are an advocate, a very specialized advocate for a senior living community and senior living leadership like Michael and his team to greatly reduce the chance for failure in doing a home care business. As we looked at, through my years, I started in home care in 2003 and worked throughout home care franchising and worked with so many different people who were such great leaders in the home care world. And every one of those relationships, you learn what works and what doesn't. Ooh, that worked. Ooh, that really didn't work. And so just years and years and years of figuring out, and many of the people on our team, which is largely focused on training, development, implementation, one-on-one coaching of the home care team that Michael has in place. And we started with his executive, and we start with, like, the business plan, the market study. We had to educate Michael and his team. We had to educate his board. We had to build kind of a groundswell. We had to convince people along the way that didn't know about that, they didn't believe that home care was even a business. And we were like, wow, I just came from a business that was doing over $1 billion in primarily private pay senior related care in the United States. And so that's really a lot of what we do and what we bring to the table is we train, develop, we remain on call to them. We do a lot of one-on-one coaching. We build the business plan. There's a pretty strong implementation program that we put in place that's a structured program. And we've really borrowed a lot, I would say, from the experiences of the franchising world. So if you think about it, so in the United States today, there are 6,000 home care businesses, and they're all led by who? They're all led primarily by transitional executives, people between the ages of 40 and 55 who've decided that they don't want to work for someone anymore. They want to own their own business. And so they reach out to one of the 30 home care franchise businesses and they say, I want to do this business in Newtown Square or in Philadelphia or in Fort Worth, Texas, wherever it is. And then those businesses provide a structure that reduces the likelihood of failure, doesn't guarantee success because you have to follow a system. Just like White Horse Village, we gave them a system. We gave them the systems and processes and training that gave them a higher likelihood for success. And I think those are the things that we bring to the table as a team. And then because we're linked very similar to franchising, when Whitehorse Village succeeds, we succeed. So if there's, my experience in the franchising world is that when I worked for the corporate franchisor, I was outside of that franchise owner's either wife or husband. I was the number one person, if I was their rep, that wanted their success. Sometimes, even in a family situation, your brother or your sister won't even want your own success. We were even elevated above family members at times because we were always there. Because when the franchisee, or in this case, when Whitehorse Village Home Care succeeds, when we help them free up opportunity to serve more, to expand mission more, and to ultimately serve more clients and more seniors, we win and they win. And so we're their biggest advocate for the actual business. And that's the glue that I think really is part of the secret sauce, because we're always trying to find opportunities to help them improve and then help kind of sharpen the sword. So that's what I think is kind of the secret sauce, to the relationship. And I liked what Michael said, is that we have a team of people who love caregivers as well. I think that's kind of unique about the approach to home care that we help bring, is that oftentimes caregivers, you hear over and over how, oh, we just don't have the caregivers. And oftentimes when organizations say they don't have the caregivers, they have some self-imposed limitations and arbitrary rules that they put on the hiring process, the training process, the intake process, that naturally limits their ability to employ people who just want to make a difference. So I would say, in that vein, we help free up some of that confusion into how you get and retain great caregivers. The top three things that caregivers are looking for is a friendly boss, a friendly director who is professional, who is a great communicator, and they want to have shared values with the person they're working for. And so when you have a great company like Whitehorse Village come to us and say, we want to partner, we look at who they are as an organization. Will caregivers be motivated to work for this organization because they share the same values that the caregiver has? And with Whitehorse Village, and along with some of our other clients throughout the US, that answer was a resounding yes.
That's awesome. That's great. Great insight
Great.
into.
Yeah, great insights. Thank you.
Michael, you kind of talked a little about some of the successes that you've had over the past year and a half. Can you expand a little bit on, since launching the home care division, or expanding your home care service line, what were the revenue, what's some of the revenue feedback wins that you've seen, and what are some of the resonant feedback that you've heard, kind of the wins from your home care division?
It's really been fascinating when prior to launching the relationship with Home Care Advocacy Network, as I mentioned, we were billing somewhere between 250 and 300 hours a month on our end. And now that we own the LLC, it's called Whitehorse Village Home Care LLC, in partnership with Home Care Advocacy Network. So now we're providing so much more education, so much more communication about the service line. The resident feedback is, well, where has this been throughout the last 37 years at Whitehorse Village? Why didn't we know about this sooner? And so
Mm.
the partnership has elevated the residents, or the consumer, or whatever definition you want to, has elevated their awareness about their choices to help them age gracefully, to age successfully, whether they need something temporarily, or they're looking for a longer term plan to get them back up on their feet, or a longer term plan to help them age in place, or as they're looking for solutions as they go through the continuum. And so the resident feedback, quantifiable too, through the Well Sky platform, has been great. The informal feedback at town hall meetings has been great as well. Residents are very happy with the structure, the plan that we have to roll, or have had to roll out the service line, and more importantly, the training that the caregivers have received. kind of going back to what Mark referenced a little while ago, when we were just employing this RSSP program, we really didn't have a good training program in place for the caregivers. But so Home Care Advocacy Network, because y'all have been in this eco space for so long, there's a dedicated training module for the caregivers because it's so much more than just ironing clothes and taking a dog for the walk. There's just so many opportunities for the caregiver to engage in, to create the relationship, how to create the relationship with the resident, and then, all the different services that the caregiver can employ on behalf or with the resident. And so the training has residents have it's been remarkable how the residents have noticed the professionalism and the reliability of the caregiver, and I link that all back to the training as well.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's awesome, honestly.
Mark, what are some additional success metrics as senior living organizations are
Mhm.
thinking about adding a home care service line? Like what, obviously the big one is the revenue, right? We
Yeah.
have to sustain it. Resident, increasing resident satisfaction, being able to, add continuum of care. But what are some other success metrics that senior living should look at when launching home care?
Yeah, I think, Michael's shaking his head, and we're probably thinking similarly. The first thing that comes to mind is the caregiver pathway into the organization that serves seniors, and we're providing a new and different entry point for people in this next generation of caregivers, the next generation of even aging in the US. I was thinking about it today on the way here, and some of my daughter's friends are, they've gone to college now, they're out, they've gone to nursing school. And, almost every single one of them, when I asked them 4 or 5 years ago, like, what are you studying as what's your specialty? And they're like, peds. Nothing against like peds, right? But the real market need is in the future with declining birth rates and increasing senior rates are people who know and can serve seniors and love seniors. And I think for an organization like Whitehorse Village and others, where you have a home care program, a lot of the caregivers are employed inside of home care because of a few different situations that happened to them inside of the world that they've lived in previously. So if they're a certified nursing assistant, oftentimes a certified nursing assistant, and I'll just be very blunt, they have a negative experience with a superior. And sometimes that's a director of nursing that is probably overtaxed, and the world has scared them to death about their nursing license. And so sometimes a newly untrained CNA will pose a risk to that nurse, and the experience from an employee boss perspective is vitriol. And so a CNA in that situation will then leave. They'll say, you know what, I want to get back to a place where I'm honored for the work that I do, and I can be treated kindly, and we have good communication, and I'm providing direct care. And so as those people come into the home care world, begin to have a good experience at what is the lowest level of care, personal care, companionship, sometimes specialized care. And, they're able to regain hope again in their own career of why they sought out in the first place when they wanted to become a CNA or they wanted to provide direct care. So I think one of the biggest advantages is career path. Career path for people who are sometimes recovering from a poor relationship with a previous boss. I also think, and it isn't just that, but it's also for new caregivers who maybe have had a family caregiving experience, and they're like, you know what, I was able to provide care to my uncle or to my mom. Maybe I can do that professionally. I can get a start. And I think that, anytime you get something that provides you hope and excitement and enthusiasm, that's a great thing. Then when you provide them a pathway into greater leadership, like Whitehorse Village, when you have home care attached to a great brand and a great company with a physical presence, that's huge, because that's one of the things a pure home care business does not have. They don't have the physical space. They're oftentimes inside of a strip mall, which is nothing wrong with that, but because you can operate that way. But you provide a great professional path for people to be able to continue to grow. And then I think when you just look at the number of people, so when we did the analysis with Michael and his team and the board, we look at 4 or 5 different criteria in his quote unquote territory. We look at seniors who are out there living alone in the county. We look at seniors who are living alone and they have cognitive challenges. We look at people who have some kind of relative disability. It might be like diabetes or comorbidities, living at home and living alone. And you look at then some of the demographics. You look at where, has their family moved away and are they alone in the community? All of a sudden now, one of the biggest advantages you have as an organization, if you have home care where you can serve on and off campus, now you have the ability to reach people. And if you are, let's say, if your community is 400, you have 400 units or 400 residences, now all of a sudden you've increased your capacity to care by 100, and maybe in year 2 or 3 by another 2 or 300 people. So I think like your ability to reach people, and that's what Michael's in the business to do. That's what we're in the business to do, is to reach people and to serve. And I think those are 2 big strategic advantages, I think, that will show up on a balance sheet. They will eventually show up on a profit and loss statement. But if you have a great organization, you just increase your reach and expanse of that great organization.
Yeah, I know
Hey,
that like a lot of the things that we talk about are, they're serving off campus is they're able to serve more lives, right? Able to impact and touch more lives.
Yeah.
So that and that goes along, I think, with any senior living organization, they're there to help seniors to touch lives, to impact as many people as they can, and this enables them to extend that reach and impact more seniors' lives and their communities. So
Michael, were you going to add something there as well?
yeah, I was back to Bridget's original question about metrics. It's not just the revenue. I think for what we have found at Whitehorse, every retirement community has an interdisciplinary team that generally meets every week to review residents and at-risk residents and what residents need to age gracefully, successfully. I think the biggest thing in this last year and a half for us in terms of metrics, we home care prior to our relationship with Home Care Advocacy Network, home care was kind of a word of mouth type of thing around the campus. But now, one of the key metrics is how many referrals are coming in or going out of the interdisciplinary team. We call the interdisciplinary team here the Aging with Choices Committee, comprised of 15 different vocations at the community level. And the metric that we monitor is the residents who are calling into our care navigators or any members of our interdisciplinary team, and vice versa. How many referrals are we making out into the community based on information that is coming into this interdisciplinary team every week? And so it's been enlightening for this Aging with Choices committee. Quite honestly, the value of home care as a strategic partner to this committee on behalf of influencing people's lives and helping them age successfully and independently as possible, no matter what level of care. So that's another metric.
awesome.
Yeah,
It's great.
it's so much more than
Hmm.
just the revenue and the number of lives and the billable hours that we have. It's enabling us to educate ourselves first, and then secondly, being able to help residents with those episodic and or longer term solutions that they've been typically outsourcing outside this campus. So
That's awesome. Do you guys have any final thoughts, comments, anything else you wanted to add before we wrapped up today?
I guess my final thought is, for those executives that are listening to this session here, this really is not a risky business. This is, if you align yourselves with the right partner, like a home care advocacy network, if you put thoughtful plans in place, thoughtful business plans, educate the board, your senior leadership team, you got the right pro formas in place. This is a very worthwhile business adventure on behalf of the people that we serve. As Mark alluded to, just, continuing the outreach and the mission orientation to our companies. And for us at Whitehorse Village, it's growing quickly in just a year and a half, well beyond the walls of Whitehorse Village. And I would just really implore the executives around the country to reach out to Mark and to Bridget and Sierra, the home care advocacy team. They're a great partner. This is not a risky adventure like we all thought it was 10 years ago. It just it's good, solid business sense on behalf of the elders that we serve around the United States. So
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah, it's really nice for you to say. And that type, that type of really great back and forth with with somebody that we serve like Michael and his team. That's the exact, I think, the hidden opportunity in what we're doing is because what we're doing is we're empowering more of that type of relationship between caregivers and seniors. Caregivers, when we look at their experience, what they're looking for in a client, in a senior home care client that they're going to serve, is that they actually want a relational back and forth. And I think, that's what we're trying to help senior living companies produce more of is positive relational back and forths where people feel less and less alone in this country. Loneliness is an epidemic, right? And so the more it affects seniors' health in such a way, in such a bad way. So I think, in a very similar way with a senior living organization that is trying to do this alone, right? It can be very hard. And it's much, cord of three strands is not easily broken. And so when we partner with the senior living community, one of the things that I'd like to share is, we help the leaders just not be alone. We're with them. We're advocating for their success. And it's also fun. Like it's fun to do entrepreneurial things with mission oriented people. We have such a small amount of time, such a short amount of time, on this earth. The other thing that I will say is that if you're a senior living executive and this all sounds good, you might be thinking of the person on your leadership team that you're going to have to convince. And you're going to have people in your boat that are trying to row it backwards. Some of the people that they want to call it ahead of time. Oh, I told you it wasn't going to work. It's just not going to work here. Michael, you just don't understand. That may have worked in Florida, but it's different here. So if I had one word of advice, don't believe them because we are at such an emerging population of seniors with increased needs that it can be done almost anywhere. I will just share one anecdote. Back in my days of working in franchising, we had the smallest territory with the fewest number of seniors dedicated to it in the United States, and it outperformed our Fairfield, Connecticut territory. And this was an area where you'll never vacation in this territory. It was in Fremont, Nebraska. Bridget and I have been there. Michael, you'd probably never be there. We'll send you pictures. But it always outperformed some of our most wealthy areas. And so I would say the person that can make a difference in senior living led home care, if you're a senior living executive, is the person looking back in the mirror at you every day. And what we do is we just help that person get to more success and greater success and limit your risk in doing it. And we have fun doing it as well.
That is awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time to chat today about the great insight into senior living organizations and senior living led home care and how it's worked there at Whitehorse Village. If you are a senior living operator that is, wanting to kind of expand your knowledge, talk a little bit more about what home care could look for like for your organization, then I urge you to go to hcanconsulting.com and sign up to start the discussions with Mark and our team here at HCAN.